Hi, I'm Moira Stevenson, pediatric psychologist, and this is an example of a setup for a non-directive play therapy assessment or intervention. So here I'm just going to use my sand tray, which is down here. And in a non-directive session, really, we don't want to impose anything on the client, the child. Now, in a semi-directive play session, we might be very strategic in our toy selection because we're trying to target different themes. But here, in a totally non-directive assessment, I don't want to have too much input at all. What I really want to do is let the child explore, and then from there, I might develop themes as we're working together. But really, I'm going with their flow. I'm going into their world. So here I have my sand tray. Now, if it's the first time I'm initiating the child to the sand tray, I'm probably going to just let them get familiar with the sensory experience. So let's see, I'm gonna have my little friend here. Let's see who's gonna be, I don't wanna get too dirty. I'm gonna pick this little guy here. He's gonna play with me in the sandbox. Okay, so I want to encourage the child to touch the sand. If they have sensory processing difficulties, it might be a bit challenging for them. In that case, I could do something like hand over hand, where I guide their hand over into the sand and they feel me touching the sand to start. Or I can guide their hand over the sandbox and let them touch. Most children are into it, so we just let them feel what the sand feels like, let it run through their fingers, just get to know what that experience is like for them. If I was doing this in more of a therapeutic sense, I might incorporate some mindfulness into that. So like really focusing on the sensations in the moment. That's what we're doing today. Today we're doing a non-directive play session. So we have the office set up for non-directive, and that I mean we keep all our toys open and available. So I'm gonna try to get them here on the camera. So here we have a collection of various toys that we can invite the child to explore. And they keep going down there actually. Okay, I hope that worked. All right, so depending on the child's functioning, maybe I'm gonna leave things in boxes because then I get an idea of their curiosity, their sense of discovery, if they're willing to grab something and look inside. Let's say they are. So we want to see, are they going to open this up? How are they even going to open the container, right? So just watching all these elements can be really informative. Here I have something that's very sensory stimulating. These are some little glass tiles I picked up. So how are they going to play with these? Are they going to click them together? Are they going to listen? Are they going to look through them? So much to discover with each step. Again, here I have something that's more based on nature with some shells. How do they use them? What do they explore? Do they start to incorporate them into the sand tray? Now, if I want to bring the session over to the sand tray, here's another box of my animals. I might just put a few objects in myself just to show that this is where we're going to play. We don't really want to talk much during a non-directive play therapy session. If the child has limited functioning, I'll probably take all these out and put them on my shelf so that they're easier for the child to grab. Okay, so let's say they've picked a few things out. Oh, that's great, you're exploring. I wonder what else we can find. So I can encourage the exploring. And then as they begin to pick up objects, I can watch how they use them. Now, what's interesting from a systemic perspective, if that's something you want to look at, you want to make sure to have some people, some characters that you can give the child and see what they do with them. Now, again, we're not directing too much, so I would just have these available and see if the child grabs them. while the child is playing, we can see how their imagination works. Are they able to create stories and scenarios with their imagination, or is their play more functional? So a child that is more functional in their play, you're going to see them set things up more. They might get more into some of the sensory elements, and they won't necessarily create a story. The stories will become more elaborate as the child develops. When we're looking at it from a systemic perspective, we're really trying to catch those narratives that have to do with family life. And what's interesting about play is that many children will represent things that are happening in their real life through play. But be careful, because it's not necessarily going to be a direct line. So having two characters fighting, maybe in this story it's a mom and dad that are fighting, but what it represents is an argument that they had at school. Often though, it's bang on and directly linked. So because we're doing non-directive though, we're not going to ask too many questions. We're just going to go with the flow by describing what the child is doing in their play. Oh, I see, this doll is talking to that doll, as example. I'm not going to ask any questions. I'm only really broadcasting what I see them do in their play. And the broadcasting method is something we might use more in an intervention later on to help develop language around certain things. But for this purpose, for assessment purposes, we're describing just to keep the flow going and to keep us a part of the experience with the child, that they know that we are observing them as they play and that we're involved with them. So describing is a nice way of being involved without directing the play. Yeah, and then you just go with the flow from there. So that's a non-directive play session. If you're planning too much, you're probably doing a directive play session.